Do you encounter any awkwardness with the PED era and the conversations now, as you know, there's players that obviously we know, right? Like Bonds, Clemens, etc., in terms of their numbers and what they've done on the field. And we've had some of those guys on this show, McGuire recently too. Numbers wise, they fit. But now they move on some of those guys to a veterans committee. And I'm sure there are guys that feel very strong about keeping players like that off. And you have to navigate, you know, those conversations, right? Because now it becomes these committees that have meetings and converse about it versus writers that do their own thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think there seems to be a very high level of integrity, so to speak, as it relates to, you know, some of those guys, Barry, Roger, McGuire. And listen, I've had a ton of conversations with guys Hall of Fame weekend, and I can tell you this: the older players are much more adamant about it than I think me or my generation are. And that's not to say that I dismiss it or I'm okay with it. I'm not. I just think that it was such a part of our generation that you dealt with it. You know, it was part of what you had to deal with. I think for the older guys, they view it much more differently. I think I've heard a number of older Hall of Fame guys say if, you know, any one of those guys got in, they won't be there for that weekend. And I think that's a real thing. You know, I think you saw the concern still for I think all of those guys as it came to this year's Veterans Committee vote, and none of them got in. So I think there's a strong feeling amongst players as it relates to the integrity of the hall and trying to protect all that. So yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting to watch moving forward. You know, like I said, I think for me, again, I'm not dismissing it. It's just, you know, it was what it was in our era, and it was something that we had to learn to contend with and get around and pitch to and all of those things. But you know, I don't have a strong feeling one way or the other. I really don't. I mean, I just think that so far the people that are in charge of voting have gotten it right.
Okay, that's fair. Mm-hmm. But what if you're on the Veterans Committee one day and they come to you and say, "Hey, Glav, you have a vote." I mean, it's just an awkward situation as a player. I mean, you played through it. I played through it. It's an awkward situation because you know how good those guys were, you know, however you feel about it. But I get it. I mean, it's the same way with me. I think over time our thoughts and our ideas will change as we get older and as we get farther away from when it actually was going on as a player.
Yeah, no, it is. It's hard because, to your point, I like all those guys. I know all those guys. I like them. You know, they're all great players. But again, I understand the problems associated with them. And you know, I'd sit here right now and I'll be perfectly honest with you. I could be persuaded if I got in a room with a bunch of veterans and you know they all had just compelling arguments as to why they should be in. Then I would be open to having the conversation. You know, tell me why. Sell me on what you're saying. You know, tell me why. Until then, I still think it's right that they're not in. But again, I can be persuaded. Let me hear your argument.